everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome back for another video. Today, as you can see by the title, is a guide to the Californian city of San Francisco. I have only been to San Francisco once, but I loved every second of it. And so while this won't be the most comprehensive guide, this will be like cherry picking the best bits and bits I recommend that you do if you visit the city. So I'll take you through getting there, things to do, what to wear and getting around, and just general bits and bobs to know about the city. So my first visit was for 2 nights as part of a coach tour that sort of went all around California. So I arrived early afternoon with the coach. We had an orientation tour around the city. So we went to sort of the Golden Gate Bridge and a couple of other iconic sites. And then we had the rest of the afternoon and the whole of the next day to ourselves. So we were there for about 36 hours, more or less, where we had a full 24 hours to ourselves to do stuff. I went with my cousin. She was 21 at the time and I was 30, and for a city I felt safe walking around during the day as two young females, but we didn't actually venture out at night, mainly because we were exhausted from all the walking around. So when we talk about sort of safety and going out at night, that will be a little bit tricky, but we'll try and touch on that a little bit. So yeah, we will get into the video. So I'll insert some pictures as we're going along so you can see what I'm referring to. So there's one word to describe San Francisco, and that is hilly. There's no other word for it, and I can see why in the Princess Diaries, the film, they use electric scooters to get everywhere. So it is a walkable city, but there are public transport options and of course the famous cable cars. So we did manage to walk everywhere, but there are some things that are quite sort of spaced out. So that was one good thing about our coach tour, because they took us to all the sites, so we didn't sort of have to work out how to kind of get from one place to the other to kind of see the iconic bits, and then we used our day to ourselves to sort of do all the walkable bits around the city. I'll now talk a little bit about how to get to San Francisco. So we actually arrived from the city of Modesto, where we'd stayed the previous night because we'd come from Yosemite National Park. So we drove over the Oakland Bridge to get into the city. However, probably the most common option to get there from the UK is to fly. So from the UK, you land into San Francisco International Airport, and then there are several ways to get into the city centre. There's lots of different sort of neighbourhoods in San Francisco, but sort of when we were there and from looking online, a common place to stay for tourists is the Union Square area, which is about 15 miles from the airport. So a taxi fare at the time of recording will set you back about $45 to $70 depending on traffic, and that is without a tip, so you will have to remember to tip on top of that. But if you don't want to use a taxi, there is quite a good public transport system called the BART. I can't actually remember what it stands for. I'll try and put it on screen if I remember. So from looking online, it's various colour-coded lines, and the lines that you need to get from the airport to Union Square is the yellow line. So it's about 10 stops from the airport to Union Square, and it takes about 35 minutes. The closest station to Union Square is called Powell Street, so that's the one that you'll need to get off from. And then again, because I didn't actually use these, I'm going from what it says online. You need to tag in and out, presumably with a credit card or a debit card, and that will determine your fee. So again, from online, it's looking about $10 per person to use the BART system. From reading online the different options, if I was to go back to San Francisco, that's probably the option I would use if I was coming in from the airport. It's not recommended to hire a car. Parking at the hotels is expensive, and a lot of the hotels don't actually even have car parks, so you have to use a public car park, which is about $35 to $60 a night, so obviously pretty pricey. And also, from looking around the city, I wouldn't really fancy driving it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to navigate a car up those hills. So yeah, that's sort of like the basic information for getting into the city centre. So the BART public transport looks the best, but there are taxis, or you can hire a car if you would prefer. So I'm now going to go on to the important stuff, and that is what to wear when you're in San Francisco. So the city is known for its mist, its fog, and its changing weather. So definitely recommend layers, and comfortable shoes are a must, especially if you're going to be walking around a lot. So I went in mid-September. I was actually there for the 9/11 Memorial Day. So yeah, mid-September. There was a lot of cloud and fog in the morning, and it was about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, and then by mid-afternoon on both days we were there, the cloud had cleared and it was bright blue skies, and the temperature was about 17 to 18 Celsius. So I think that pattern follows for a lot of the year, particularly sort of spring and summer and autumn. It's very cloudy, gloomy, and a bit cold in the morning, and then it brightens up in the afternoon. So yeah, layers is all I can recommend. It's not a particularly fashionable city, if that's not being rude. Sort of, I don't remember walking around thinking, oh, they look nice, or they're very stylish. It's not like Paris or Milan, where sort of it's quite a fashion forward city. So I think, yeah, anything goes. So now we'll get on to the sort of main bit of the video, which is what to do when you're in San Francisco. So obviously one of the main attractions, and the thing that San Francisco is famous for, is the Golden Gate Bridge. So it's famous for its bright orange colour, and it's 1.7 miles long, and you can walk across the bridge. It's got a designated pedestrian and bike lane, and there is no charge to walk over the bridge, but there are tolls for driving. So yeah, you've got sort of a dedicated lane for pedestrians, dedicated lane for bikes. However, they do sort of merge, and it's, you know, people don't necessarily stick to their lanes, but it's a nice walk across the bridge. So if you were to do this, I'd recommend probably doing it in the afternoon, because as you can see from the photos, in the morning it was very, very cloudy, and so you don't get the best view, A, of the bridge itself, but B, looking out from the bridge when you're on it. But highly recommend doing that walk. It is quite far out from the city centre, so there are sort of bus options to get there, or you can rent bikes from around the city and cycle there. But remember, it is very, very hilly. So after the Golden Gate Bridge, another thing that we did was we did an optional excursion on our tour, which was to do a boat tour, which takes you underneath the bridge, does like a circle, and then takes you back. I would highly recommend doing this. The boat tour we used, I'll leave their name on the screen, and the pier that you leave from. I've still got my ticket, so I'll put that information on screen. So again, this is one that I would recommend doing for the afternoon. When we got on the boat, it was about 2:30, and it was still very cloudy, but just as we sort of started to go under the bridge, that's when the cloud started to break through, and by the time we'd done our little loop and sort of gone back to our starting point, the sun was out, the sky was blue, and you had a really good view of the bridge. So yeah, definitely save that for the afternoon. Highly recommend. This was probably my favorite thing that we did in San Francisco. However, it is very windy, as you can see from the photo. Hair went everywhere, but yeah, it was a great trip. And it also goes does a loop around the outside of Alcatraz, so it doesn't stop and let you get off and go onto the prison, but it does do a loop, because we didn't actually go to Alcatraz. I'll come on to that in a minute, but if you don't want to go and see it, this would be a good way to kind of just get your feeling or bearings of it, and then you don't actually have to get on the boat to go around the prison. Another thing that we did was to visit the Twin Peaks. So this is another thing to do with the bridge. So this is a viewing spot about 4 miles from the city centre, or about 4 miles from the bridge, sorry. So this was where our bus came in handy, because it just took us straight there, but there are public buses to get there, and there is a parking lot at the top where you can stop your car, or you could get a taxi. But this is a good place to get a really good view of the city. You can see sort of like all the hills, the blocks of the streets, but you can see where it's hilly, and then there's like a big windy path that you drive up to get there. We went here sort of late morning, around lunchtime, and it was still very cloudy, but one thing I did like was that you could see the top of the Golden Gate Bridge poking through the clouds. So we'd kind of been on the actual bridge that morning, and then yeah, to go up there and see the top of the bridge poking through the clouds, I just thought that was quite funny. And then another thing to do is Alcatraz prison, as previously mentioned. So this is a famous prison that's had lots of famous inmates, shall we say. Machine Gun Kelly was there. I think Al Pacino. No, not Al Pacino. Is that right? I think I've just embarrassed myself. I'm going to have to check that. So yeah, we didn't actually go around it, mainly because you need to book tickets in advance, and we just didn't get around to doing it because we didn't know, even though we knew we had the full day in San Francisco, we didn't want to restrain ourselves with time by knowing we had to get there. So it was just sort of a sacrifice. There were other bits of the city we wanted to see rather than going to Alcatraz. So if you had a little bit longer, it would be, you could fit it into another day. There were people who on our tour who had been before, who gave us mixed reviews. Some said it was brilliant and sort of you really got a feel for being in the prison, and then others just said it's a rundown building full of bird poo. So mixed reviews. Go in with an open mind, and I'm sure it's a fabulous excursion. And then another site to see, I feel like I'm sort of just reeling these off. I've got my notes here. But I want to try and make this video as quick as possible, or as succinct as possible. So the next thing I'd highly recommend is to visit Lombard Street. So this is known as supposedly being the crookedest street in the world. Our bus driver did tell us there was one somewhere else in the world that does claim that title, but I can't remember where that was, but it's definitely crooked here. So Lombard Street is actually it runs quite a way through the city. So if you want to see the crooked bit, it's located between Hyde Street and Leavenworth Street, and Chestnut Street and Greenwich Street. So I'll put a little picture up of a map so you can see where the crooked bit is. But even on the map, the rest of the map is straight, and then you have this little crooked bit. So yeah, it's well worth a visit. I think there's 8 or 10 bends, and you can walk up the side of the road because it is a functional road. Cars do come down it. The only thing is going up the side of the road, it is a residential area, so you need to be aware that it is outside people's houses, and so be careful with photos and making sure you don't disturb their privacy. But highly recommend a visit to Lombard Street, and they've got lots of shrubs and bushes growing around it, so it's really, really pretty. And then another area which I really, really liked is Fisherman's Wharf. So this is a harbour area on the northern waterfront, and you pick up, this is where you pick up your boat tour from if you choose to do that. So there's lots of places to eat here and lots of tourist attractions. There's a Madame Tussauds, a Ripley's Believe It or Not, there's the Canaries shopping centre, and the US Pampanito, which is a decommissioned World War II submarine, which is cool to look at, but I think you can also go around it as well. So yeah, this is sort of like the main touristy hub, but even though there's lots of touristy bits, you can just sort of wander around and spend a couple of hours around here. So the piers are numbered. As I said, found the pier that our boat tour left from, but the most well-known pier would probably be Pier 39. So from my point of view, this is like Brighton Pier times 1,000. It's a lot bigger, it's a lot more grand, and just a bit more out there. So there are stalls, arcade shops, there's the aquarium. So yeah, there's lots to do, sort of to spend a couple of hours, but then there's also things to do if you just want to kind of sit down and have a chill. So by one part of the pier you have the sea lions, and you can just, there's lots of seating around there, and you can just sit and watch them play around with each other, sort of bask in the sun, watch them have a little swim. And so we sat there for a good half hour, 40 minutes, just watching them, because they were really entertaining. I know there's a time of the year when they don't appear there, so again I'll put that on screen, because yeah, no point going there if the sea lions aren't there. And then from Pier 39 you can also get views of Alcatraz, the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge. So yeah, highly recommend going there. It's sort of just a nice place to wander around, get some souvenirs, and be a typical tourist for that bit. Okay, and then the final thing I would recommend is the Painted Ladies. So these are a row of houses which are located in Alamo Square, which is actually a nice sort of park area to sit down in. We walked from our hotel to Alamo Square, which took us about an hour, and so after going up and down all the hills, it was nice to just sit there and have a little rest. And then the houses are located on Steiner Street from 710 to 720. So it's just a row of 5 houses that are really pretty. They're multicoloured, different colour for each house. And yeah, they just look really nice. Obviously you can't go around them because they are people's houses, but to look at from the outside, they're really pretty. One thing is, a mistake I made was I thought that was the house that Mrs. Doubtfire was filmed in. That's a little bit further up on the same street, but that's at 2640 Steiner Street. So a little bit far apart. So by that time of the day, I was absolutely exhausted. So I didn't actually go and find that house. But I know that I think on the anniversary of Robin Williams' death, they do a little shrine, and they put flowers down and stuff. So yeah, I'd like to go and see that house if I was to return to San Francisco. Okay. Oh, and one last thing is Union Square. So that's sort of kind of the main area, or a good area to stay in, and they do have a Macy's department store there, so you can go up to the top floor and then get like a good view of the city and of Union Square from the top of Macy's. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is places to eat, or things to eat when you're in San Francisco. So embarrassingly, we didn't actually properly eat out in San Francisco. The first evening we got there, we went to Macy's because they had a Cheesecake Factory, and so we just picked up a takeaway meal and took it back to our room, mainly because the rest of the tour had been quite sort of fast paced, and this was the first kind of evening where we knew we didn't have to rush out the following day and knew that we had the rest of the day. So yeah, we just got a takeaway, but we did get to kind of go and see Union Square, so we did a little sightseeing tour on our way to get food. But yeah, highly recommend Cheesecake Factory. It was nice. And then the second evening again, we were really exhausted from walking around all day, so we just got dinner in the hotel. But some sort of traditional San Francisco dishes is the clam chowder. So this is a bread roll filled with clams, potatoes, cream, carrots and onions. I'll pop a picture up on screen. I'm not sure how delicious it is. It's not my kind of thing. I'm not a big fan of clams, but yeah, I'm sure it's tasty. Again, I didn't have it, so I can't give any opinion on it, but I know that that's a traditional San Franciscan dish. One thing I will say is that my cousin was gluten and dairy intolerant, and she found it really difficult in San Francisco to find places and things she could eat. We'd also been to LA previously in the trip, and that was a lot more, there was a lot more variety for food intolerances there, but in terms of San Francisco, she did find it quite difficult to eat. So if you do have sort of dietary requirements, sort of that will be something to consider and bear in mind when visiting. Yeah, they weren't particularly sort of catering to, and any sort of gluten-free or dairy-free options were a bit naff. So yeah, just consider that when you if you go. Okay, and then the final thing I'm going to talk about is safety. So as previously said, we were two young-ish females on our own. So while we were part of a group, on that second day we were just by ourselves. Felt safe, didn't feel sort of threatened or anything. There was a lot of homeless people about, but you know, as hard as it sounds, you just ignore them and walk past them. It is hard to see, but you know, it's what you've got to do. We stayed in, being very childish here, we stayed in the Nob Hill area, which apparently isn't the best area, especially because it's near the Tenderloin, which is a place to avoid. We got given a map of the city, and our tour guide had put a big cross through the Tenderloin and told us absolutely don't go there, especially at night. As previously said, we didn't actually venture out at night, just because we were exhausted and yeah, chose to spend the evenings in our hotel. But I think I would have been okay walking around at night, but I would have sort of had my wits about me and sort of done the usual things of kept my belongings hidden. If anyone who's watching has had experience of walking around San Francisco at night, please feel free to leave a comment, because I want these videos to help people, and if there's something that I can't help with, hopefully another person can. So speaking of that, of helping other people, obviously San Francisco is famous for the cable cars, which is one thing we didn't actually get to do, which I'm really upset about, but you know, there's always next time. So there's a main hub of the cable cars. I think it's down by Fisherman's Wharf, but I'll double check that. And then there's two main lines. I think one's called the Powell line, and I'll leave what the other one is, and basically they just go back and forth, and I'll put ticket prices and sort of information on screen, and I'll leave a link in the description box to someone who's more informative of cable cars. But again, if anyone who's watching has used the cable car, please feel free to leave a comment to help other people. So I will leave the video there. That's sort of my guide to San Francisco, sort of the main things that I would recommend. So walking the Golden Gate Bridge, going to see the view from the Twin Peaks, Lombard Street, Fisherman's Wharf, doing the boat tour under the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Painted Ladies in Alamo Square. I'm sure there's lots more that there is to do in the city, but for 36 hours we managed to cram all that in. And obviously San Francisco is kind of, you can use it as a gateway to go further afield. There's the Napa Valley, there's the Redwoods, Yosemite National Park, which is absolutely amazing. I'll put some pictures up now. And then you can also go on Highway 1 or the Pacific Coast Highway, which will take you back down towards LA and Southern California. So I will leave the vlog there. Thank you very much for watching. If you did, I hope you found something useful in this video, and if you have any recommendations that you can recommend to other people, please leave them in the comment box. So yes, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to do more sort of travel videos because that's sort of where I want to take the channel. And yes, I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.